Okay, we're back. A couple of minutes late here tonight. Got basketball going on. Gators got jumped on by Kentucky right before the halftime. They're trailing now by 10, I believe. But tonight, it's not just about basketball. It's about, as always, football around here. That means when we have Wednesday nights, it means sweet and sour time. That means Allie, Pete, Wilbur, and David Moulton, plus a bonus guest tonight, the great Tony Barnhart, coming your way right here in the program. So stay tuned. It's next, right here, right now. Go tell your friends and neighbors. The Buddy Martin Show is on the air.
It's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening and welcome to the program. I'm Buddy Martin here in our Northwest Florida studios, and we've got a show for you tonight. One of your favorites, our favorite people, and good topics tonight. And by the way, where are things going with football? Well, I tell you what, we have somebody who's on it. Her podcast is one of the best anywhere. If you haven't been listening to it, you need to get Alec Pete Wilbur's Peek at the Gators. It's one of the most informative. She stays up. And by the way, she's everywhere now. She's on a lot of different podcast networks. But we're not going to let them claim her. She's ours. Well, sort of. Allie Pete Wilbur. Hello, Allie. How you doing?
Good. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing all right tonight. And I'm in the process of moving the studio back to Ocala for a couple of weeks or whatever. And moving days are always hard. But, hey, It comes with the territory, doesn't it?
It does. That's true. And hey, it's pretty neat that your studio can just pack up and go wherever you are.
I know. It's amazing. It's very portable. Very portable in that regard. Yeah. So in a minute or two, we're going to have on one of our favorite guys, and yours too, Tony Barnhart. He's got a book out, which you bought already, and I have not. I meant to, and I have not. You have not read yours yet. But yeah, so it's really an unusual name. Which you say, what's the 19 of green, the knee? All right. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing about it. And Tony will join us soon. I also can't wait to ask him about what is going on with Tennessee. My goodness. This sounds like another dumpster fire, although Tennessee's president is firing back at the NCAA. Now we'll see. Does NCAA have the clout it used to? No. Can they fend off Tennessee's assault on them? I don't know. What's your take on that, Allie?
I did an interview right before I came on here, actually, with the Tennessee Insider. It's going to run tomorrow. And, he thinks that the NCAA is going to lose. Tennessee filed they filed in court today. They are fighting this tooth and nail, and they kind of have public support on their side. Their chancellor, who, when Tennessee got in trouble under Pruitt, really kind of took it on the chin and said, "You're right. We were wrong. We will comply. We are so sorry." Did jump through all the hoops, did all the things. Well, this time she's saying, "No, we did not do anything wrong. And you are now trying to go back retrospectively and apply rules that were not rules at the time this happened." Essentially, the crux of the issue is their quarterback, their all-world guy, Nico, who everybody wanted at the time, was flown on a charter plane paid for by their collective to a visit at the school. He was already signed with the collective, and he lives in California, so that was his transportation to Knoxville. And Tennessee is saying, how is he supposed to get to Knoxville for these visits if it wasn't allowed to be paid for? And, they think they have a case. And the person I talked to said they will not be very surprised to see Ashley Moody, Florida's attorney general, actually jump in on this lawsuit, potentially. Virginia is joining the lawsuit with them. They expect some other states to jump in as well. And, the last time the NCAA was taken to court is when it went to the Supreme Court. And I can't remember the last time the Supreme Court decided 9-0 to nothing against anybody. There's a split decision, but 9-0 against the NCAA last time they made it all the way to the Supreme Court. So I think that this could be the beginning of the end.
Well, I mean, it's like blood in the water, isn't it? They're sensing the kill. This is a weakened NCAA. And you can look at it from the standpoint where people are saying, why aren't you doing more? Because we know, let's be honest, it's crooked right now out there. It's crooked. There's deals being made. We know about them. Everybody seems to be doing it. And, and that's not a defense, by the way. Everybody else is doing it. They work that way. So
but
they're picking.
Time making common sense rules that everybody can agree by and follow to kind of witch hunts over essentially something that you look under any curtain in the entire country and you're going to find similar things.
Well, but it's like some things are just that way. Like in football, it's always the guy who strikes back, the second offender who gets the penalty, not the guy who created the penalty. It's like, your mama catches, I didn't do it, he hit me first. I mean, that's the mentality we're at right now. Whereas I do think we need regulation. I don't think we need the NCAA. They're kind of lost in the graveyard someplace, I think.
Right.
Not to touch it. Well, that too, I want to get with Tony on that. We'll talk about it. But also I want to talk to you about the subject tonight was how much better did Billy Napier's team get after landing what is now the number one quarterback, number two player, and DJ Lagway, and now the top defensive player at LJ McCray. I mean, wow, if he just took that on the face, not to mention Miles Gray and other players. So I want to get to that subject. But before we do that, let's do this. Let's go. Let me just do this quick read, and let's get Tony Barnhart right here in the orange and blue room and talk about his new book. And I'm excited. I know you bought it already, Allie. So when you get through it, I'm just saying, let me borrow it. No, I got to buy it. I can't do that. All right. I'll tell you about Titan MRI. Titan MRI is worth the short drive to Gainesville. No insurance is no problem. You can pay with cash or card with same-day scheduling available. So start feeling better about that today if you're in the North Central Florida area. They are number one Florida's premier independent MRI facility. Check them out. Come see why hundreds of people are driving to Gainesville from places like Ocala and Gainesville and Lake City and area and checking them out, the villages. That's TitanMRI.com. You'll be glad you did. All right, two, the orange and blue room. In this case, it's the orange, it's the red room, but we'll call it whatever he wants to call it. We get this guy on. Our friend Tony Barnhart joins us. Good evening, Tony. How you doing?
I am fine. How are you guys doing?
You know Allie, of course. And
of course.
She bought your book, man. So
thank you.
Yeah, but I did. As soon as when we were on together last time, that night, I ordered it, and it was actually I gave it to my husband to have my kids give me for Christmas, since the shopping thing is not always the best in this house.
Good idea. Good idea.
But I'm hoping I'll have a weekend here coming up that I can read it.
Well,
good. I appreciate that.
Two sets of twins, that doesn't happen very often. Tony, before we get into the book, and I really want to get more into it, we talked to you about it before, because it's such a personal story. And sometimes the personal stories are the best stories. You had an interesting growing up time, and this is about Greene County, Georgia. But before that, you got to weigh in on Tennessee. Al and I were just talking about it. The mess that the NCAA is in. Looks like all the schools are smelling blood in the water. Tennessee striking back and vociferously. Where do you see this going, and what do you know about this case?
Well, we're in a situation now where the college athletics has got to make up its mind whether or not it wants the rules enforced or not. And what the NCAA is saying is, well, wait a minute, you told us this was out of control. You told us that this was a wild, wild west. We're trying to do something about it, but the people who get hit are starting to holler the loud. I really believe, and Matt Hayes wrote this on Saturdays Down South. He said we may be looking at the end of the NCAA enforcement era. In other words, we've talked for a long time that maybe the time was going to come when there needs to be a group of 50 or 60 people who want to play athletics, particularly football at this level, and come up with our own enforcement procedure. But this right now is a total mess.
Kind of what Allie and I were saying, and I think we're all curious as to where it's going to go from here. And Allie, you were saying you think maybe Tennessee the NCAA might be out of business after this.
I think the NCAA focuses on the wrong things, but I think that, if they lose again in court, it just continues to erode any sort of power that they have left. And Tony, before you hopped on, we were talking about when it made it to the Supreme Court and they were ruled against 9-0, which almost never happens with the Supreme Court. I think they're gonna have a hard time. They argue this amateurism, which is great in theory, but not really in practice.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead, Allie. Did we lose you? Tony, you there?
Yes, I'm right here.
Okay, we lost you.
Here. We got you.
Okay, all right. Go ahead. Finish your sentence. Nope, we don't have you. All right. We're not getting you. Tony, you hear me all right? Well, now maybe it's me. I don't know what to think here. Talk among yourselves while we see what's going on here with our technology. It's in and out. So, all right. Apologize, folks. We were doing fine there for a while, and let's see if we can get the thing back to working. Let's stand by for a second. Every time they do an update, this happens. Sorry, guys. All right. Stand by. Okay, apparently they can hear us out there. So you guys go ahead while we work on this. Finish up your thought, Allie, even though I can't hear you. I'm told that others can. So you guys talk among yourselves. Go ahead, Allie. All right. All right, folks. I don't know what's happened. We've lost our guest here. We're going to see if they can log back on again. And something happened with the audio. We're not sure what. Brendan, if you're out there, weigh in and tell us if you can hear it. One of those nights. Okay, there's Tony. Tony, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you, buddy.
Okay, good. Thank you for logging back in. Appreciate that. While we get Allie back in, go ahead and finish the thought you had about the NCAA and about the problems that they've got and about whether or not. Here's Allie. Let's see. Allie, you back?
I'm back.
All right, we're back, guys. Yay, we're back. What triumph for man over machine. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry, guys. Something happened. You're having a good conversation about this. Allie, pick up where you left off, and then Tony.
I just, in general, think the NCAA would be better suited to figure out a set of rules that everybody can play within, and kind of levels the playing field a little bit. Maybe chips away at maybe there's some profit sharing involved or something like that. Because right now it's not sustainable that we're asking our fans to buy season tickets, buy the jerseys, drive to the games, pay the gas, buy the concessions. Oh, and by the way, contribute monthly to your collective so that your 19-year-old players can drive a nicer car than you. That's insanity.
Yeah, and the money is coming out of the same pockets, Tony, as well. All right, so let me go ahead, Tony.
The reality, and this is what people don't want to hear, is that to solve the problem, you're going to have to come up with some sort of collective bargaining arrangement. Because anything you do, the Tennessee case right now is what they're saying is, hey, you can't limit what these guys can make in the open marketplace. If you start putting in rules that said you can do this and you can do that, then you're violating. It's all antitrust law. So at the end of the day, and again, people don't want to hear this, is the players are going to have to be employees of the university. There's going to have to be collective bargaining done, because if contracts are done through collective bargaining, then by definition they cannot violate antitrust law. And so that's where we're headed. And the case with Tennessee is just an example of what's going to happen next.
Right. Yeah. And again, before we get to your book, it's, we should have expected this, Tony. We saw this coming. It was the wild, wild west, which you said many, many times. There was no regulation. And the question is now, guy, before we turn to Tony's book, is where are they going to go next to get some kind of regulation? It's not going to be the government. Is the NCAA even going to be in business in 2 years? First you, Tony, then Allie, then we'll talk about the book.
I don't think there is a long-term future in football. Let's make that distinction right now. I don't think there's a long-term future for football in the NCAA. Now, we'll say this. NCAA, for all their problems, they run a real nice basketball tournament, okay? They also run other championships, which is what they were formed to do. But the idea that they can somehow have an enforcement mechanism, it's not working, okay? The only way that I see is for it to work is to have another organization and create your own enforcement structure.
I agree with that, don't you, Tony? Don't you, Allie?
Yeah, we've talked about this point a lot, buddy, you and I. I think the NCAA showed us that they had no power when COVID happened, and they deferred to the conferences instead of making a blanket-wide decision. That was the chink in the armor that everybody has attacked since then. I honestly think that that's what needs to happen again. It's the conferences. The conferences need to get together and figure out a way to put some restrictions on what is going on, and that is what could save college football as we know it, essentially.
Sure. All right, the 19 of green. And David, stand by 1 second while we finish this thought. Terrific book, I hear. Some people have bought it. I have not. I will. It's a personal story about Tony's life in Georgia, growing up in Greene County, Georgia, which, by the way, I had some relatives in many years ago. And Tony, it's almost like your own version of Junction, Texas.
Well, we were very pleased with the way the book turned out. Bottom line, fall of 1970, long time ago, I grew up in Greene County. We had a white school, Greene County High School, and we had a black school, Floyd T. Carey High School. And the schools merged in 1970. The court said, you're going to do this once and for all. And we thought, merging two schools, we'd have 60 guys and it's going to be great. Well, it turns out when spring practice was over, we had 19 guys, 12 white, 7 black, and that's how we started. And this is the story of that team. We won 7 out of our last 8 and got to the playoffs, and where we lost in the first round. But this book is not about football. The book is about the fact that 53 years after we played our last game together, these guys have stayed in touch. We had a team celebration and a book signing back at Greene County High School where it all started. We did that back on December 9 and had a wonderful turnout. And there are 15 players still alive on that team, and 9 of them showed up for the book signing. And what we did was every guy that was there, a former player, we did a big long table, and everybody got to sign their books. Every guy's got a different chapter. and that was a special day.
That's nice. Nice story. What position did you play? Tackle?
I played several positions. I played guard. I played tackle. I played defensive back, and I played tight end. Didn't play any of them particularly well, but hey, plug Barnhart in there. At least he won't get himself hurt.
Brock Bowers, and back in Greene County, he was.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, Tony, let you go. One quick thought before I let you go. We'll get David on here. Bulldogs going to bounce back. Looks like they just drew a bad hand. They're loaded. Will this 12-team playoff order things down? Give me your thoughts real quick on Georgia in 2024.
Well, first of all, Georgia's going to be a preseason number one. Probably Georgia and Ohio State will be the two teams that everybody's talking about going in. I think the 12-team playoff is going to be great. You're going to open up the doors and give a lot more people access to it. And think about this: the first weekend, there are going to be 4 playoff games in the first round. The 4 of them will be played on campus, and I think that will be neat as all get out. And the competition to get those home playoff games is going to be fierce, and the competition to get a bye in the first round will be fierce. We'll be talking about 20 at the end of before championship Saturday. We'll be talking about 20 teams that have a chance to make at least 20 teams have a chance to make the playoffs.
Great, Tony Barnhart, the I almost said the mean of Green. Mean Joe Green. Looking forward to reading the 19 of Green, Tony. And thank you for your time. Be well, my friend. Good luck with the book.
Thank you, buddy. Congratulations to you and your bride. That was the wonderful news. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful. So I'll catch up on it later, Tony, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
All right. Now, let's see if they're telling me that we've had a weak internet signal for some reason. So I couldn't bring David on at the time with it because the more you bring on, apparently the worse it gets. But let's go get our man, at least the sour, sweet and sour. David Moulton joins the program again. Good morning, David. Good afternoon, David. How you doing? David, can you hear me? Oops, he doesn't have his headset on. All right, he's going to put it on now. And there he is, David Moulton. How are you, David?
Good. Hi, Allie.
Hey there. How are you?
I'm good. What's up?
We've had a few internet issues here, and every time we bring on more than 2 people, we lose something. So sorry about that, David. So welcome back.
It's okay.
We were just talking about the Tennessee situation, as many are, and a little bit about Tony's book. And so the question for Allie before we started, and I'll get her to jump in here and do this, is how has this team's Florida recruiting rankings improved since On3 came out with their new rankings, and they have Florida having the number 1 quarterback, obviously DJ Lagway, and now the number 1 defensive player. Usually speaking, when you get that kind of recruiting and you have a few other players, it is in your favor. Allie, what are you hearing about that? What are you thinking? Let's get David's take on what he knows about it.
I think that holding on to those 2 mantelpieces of the class was the mission, right? And from that aspect, the mission was successful. It's huge to show Gator fans that you are capable of recruiting, because that's what you were brought in to do, was be a better recruiter than Mullen was. And, we knew that he wasn't going to be as good of a game day coach, but he was supposed to be a world-class recruiter. And I don't know that we've fully seen that yet, but this is a good sign in the right direction. We're headed in the right direction. But, I think for Gator fans, I would temper expectations, because neither one is going to be a huge contributor in 2024. So, hopefully LJ finds his way onto the field and earns a starting role. But for sure DJ Lagway is going to be sitting behind Graham Mertz. I would expect him to get a package drawn up for him so they can get him some SEC experience, but he's not going to be the starter. That's Graham Mertz. You kind of got to get to 2025 to really see what these guys can do. And, Napier's got to make it through 2024 first.
David, what are you hearing?
Well, I just don't know it. And like Allie said, it's awesome that you held on to the 2 5-stars, and that could lead to others down the road. Just don't know that the Gators have gotten the numbers that they've needed this offseason between the portal and recruiting, because he's got to survive, as Allie said, 2024, arguably the toughest schedule in the country. I don't know how you can argue somebody's is harder. And, 11 Power 5 opponents, Miami, UCF, Florida State in state. They're all landmines for different reasons, even if he can keep his head above water in the SEC. So, the odds are against Billy right now. They really are. And my fear is that some of what he's brought in that we're really happy about, once the coach gets blown out, kids usually leave. I mean, just take a look at Nick Saban leaving. I mean, well, a really good situation where kids were pretty sure that if they stayed, they were going to make the playoff and they were going to be successful. And 24 of them said, I'm out of here. And that's, so, buddy, I got to be honest with you. I don't know what Allie and I are going to say differently over the next 7 months. I really don't. I don't know how this situation is going to change. It is what it is. He's got to win some games in 2024 to see 2025, and then he's got to have a kick-ass offseason after the 2024 season, and 2025 is make it happen time.
Well,
and now it doesn't have to be, and it doesn't. I'm sorry, it doesn't have to be make the playoff, but it's just got to be, I don't know, a 9-3 season where Gator fans go, okay, all right, we went through the worst of it. Now we've emerged. Okay, we got a hotshot quarterback who's going to stick around for a couple more years. Okay, all right, this is good. This is good. Glad we stuck with him.
I think it's going to be interesting to see if we pick anybody up after spring. The transfer portal will open again. We need a guard. We need another wide receiver probably. We could use another defensive lineman. So will we pick up those things in the spring? That's probably the next thing Florida fans can look at. Maybe we sign somebody that we weren't expecting in signing day in February. Odds are against that, but we'll see. But you're right. Gator fans are going to be in a holding pattern until August, essentially. I mean, we can be cautiously optimistic about hearing that the workouts changed or that the tempo of practice is intense and whatever else. But truly, we're in a show me, prove it to me moment right now. And that can't happen until you put the pads back on in August.
And buddy, I don't know if we need to wet our finger and go week to week once the season starts either. I mean, if they lose to the Canes, is it over?
Right.
I think we just need to let this sucker play out.
Miami's going to be the most important game of Napier's tenure up until that point. That is going to be the canary in the coal mine, so to speak, the early part of the season. We're talking about Mario Cristobal's in the identical situation that Napier is in. He was brought in to be a bang-up recruiter. He's 2 years in. He's been less than impressive on the field. He's done a decent job recruiting. But, if Florida can beat Miami, I think that's a sign that things are moving in the right direction. If Florida cannot beat Miami, who is struggling just as much as UF is, that's not a good sign.
No, especially since Florida will be at home with the experienced quarterback.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you're right, David, about holding your finger in the air. On the other hand, fans want to know what's going on. This has not been the most transparent unit here this year between the coaches and stuff, and we wonder what Billy's learned, if he has learned, and what he's changing. I'm seeing, Alec, I see you have one of the most informative podcasts because you keep your finger on the pulse and you talk to the money people and you know what they're thinking. But I'm seeing little wrinkles of people say, look, we got a new defensive guy. We made some changes here. People were holding their breath thinking they hired a new special teams coach. Well, they did, but he wasn't the special teams coach. He was the analyst, he was assistant from New England. So he's made some changes, but you can't make changes just for changes. I don't know, of all the changes that have been made, Alan, you keep up with it, which are the most promising and what is lacking?
The most important change that he made over the offseason was a new strength and conditioning staff. That is the captain of your ship for like 7 months out of the year. Wins and losses are made between January and August. So, I think that was the most important hire. It's sad that it took 2 years to get to this point, though, because we did not have an SEC caliber weight program going on for the last 2 years. Hopefully now we do. The players are saying that they have seen marked changes already and that intensity is just off the charts and compared to what they're used to. So hopefully that's moving in the right direction. I don't really have an issue with the special teams coach that they hired being an analyst. I'll tell you why. Like 90% of teams don't have a just dedicated special teams coach. It's usually you are this coach and you coach special teams. Like Urban was the head coach and coach special teams. Ron Zook was the head coach and coach special teams. Maybe you're the wide receivers coach and you coach special teams. So being an analyst essentially means he can't have a headset on the sidelines. That is where this is. So my only concern with that is who is calling the plays, communicating the plays to him. Because if you don't have someone communicating it to your special teams guys on the sidelines, it doesn't really matter that you have a new special teams coach. And furthermore, from there, unless Billy Napier is going to change his belief in special teams, I don't know that it really matters who wears the special teams title. I've been told by multiple people that special teams is 15 minutes at the end of practice, if that. If something else doesn't run long. And, that is never going to be a successful special teams. Ron Zook, Urban Meyer, Dan Mullen, Muschamp, all of them, the thing they had in common was the first couple of periods of practice with special teams. They treated it as 1/3 of the game because it is. So unless Napier is going to change his attitude towards it, I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot of change on the field, but I think it's a good sign that you hired a guy and acknowledged it and you're bringing him in. I don't care what his title is if his job is to make special teams better, which he's done at his previous stops.
That is about the emphasis on it, that's for sure. Now, Shane Matthews hollers at me every time I do the show with him, which I do every week, when I talk about special teams coordinator. He says, yesterday on Monday, I've been to 1,000 meetings on special teams. I can tell you how it goes down. Everybody on the whole coaching staff is a part of the special teams. They all have the responsibilities to do that. It's not one guy. Well, if it's not one guy, then why did Urban take the position of being the special teams coach?
You're both right. So I actually just talked to Eric about how Urban did this. So it's Urban schemes, it's Urban's concepts, but there was responsibilities doled out to different coaches depending on what it is. So if it's field goal block, right there, Adazio was in charge of that because he's going to know how to tell his linemen which way to shift, which way to, get the best angle, the best advantage. That he coached that portion of it. So, and that's the same thing with lots of other coaches around there, but it was Urban schemes, Urban's concepts. Punt block was Urban's baby. So that was a unit that he was going to coach himself. So I think you're both kind of right. Like there needs to be a captain of the ship. Everybody else may have a supporting role and coach something that they have knowledge related to, the line, the kickers, the block, whatever, but there's got to be a captain. But even more so than a captain, there's got to be an emphasis. You have to care about special teams. You have to believe that it impacts the outcome of games. Otherwise, the rest of it doesn't really matter.
I have to admit, it's a little disconcerting to me. This is a guy who is so meticulous, so detailed, and yet not when it comes to special teams. And I could argue with Allie if in today's game special teams is still 1/3 of the game or not, but it's at least 20%, probably 25 to 28%. And with the schedule they have and the conference that they're in and fighting for the survival, quite frankly, that they're fighting for, to be as haphazard seemingly about 25 to 33% of the game, to me is unexplainable.
The only way I think you can justify special teams not having a huge emphasis is if your offense and defense are so insanely dominant that you can overcome a special teams blunder. And Florida is essentially the exact opposite of that the last couple of years. And I think you could argue that last season, Florida wins somewhere between 2 and 4 more games if they had competent special teams. And that's a problem. The Arkansas game is, going to be a core memory for me, nightmare, watching that transpire on the sidelines. And then it was an even bigger issue for me when Napier says that it was a player that was in charge and he called in the wrong thing. How in the hell there is a player in charge of anything on the sidelines is beyond me. You have 87 assistants running around holding your cup of coffee. One of them can count to 11. He needs to stand right next to your special teams unit with a clipboard, with a roster of here's first team, here's second team, he's third team, and constantly be counting where his guys are. And that does not happen, but that happens on most sidelines.
I think you have a get back coach, and you sure get a guy to count the number of players on the field. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. Let's do this. I want to shift gears a little bit on tonight because we do have a big game coming up here next week. David, part of your deal is you covered the NFL and have all year. And I made a comment earlier about this, that it seems like almost college football is becoming more like the NFL, and the NFL becoming more like college football. That's my perception after watching how fast Kansas City is. And Patrick Mahomes looks unbelievable. And Michigan just won a game in the trenches by playing black and blue division type football, won championship. So think about that for 1 second. Tell me if I'm right or wrong, full of beans, whatever. Let me go do this quick commercial with Moulton Law. I want to get to that. And then I'm going to ask you the question, can you give me, this is interesting, most points scored in a Super Bowl based on a player's last college game that college attended, okay? If the number is what school, what leads in total points from what school in the NFL in terms of scoring. Players who played from a school, let's just take Texas Tech or whatever, all right? Their players have scored X number of points. It's interesting. It doesn't make a lot of sense to go through this list. You'll be really surprised to know who the first 2 teams are in this list. Think about that. Think about college football and pro football being interchangeable. Let's hear from Moulton Law. And come back on a sweet and sour Wednesday. David's back. Alex in the house. Always a good night. Jeffrey Moulton. Jeffrey, you do a show where you ask a lot of questions. I've got one for you right now, okay, regarding how do you know whether your case is being handled right and what to do about it. In medicine, you can get a second opinion if you're not satisfied with the doctor's opinion that they have. And do you have that in law? Can you do that with lawyers?
Yeah, buddy. As a matter of fact, we get quite a few calls from folks that have signed up, particularly with the big box law firms, that they do a hell of a good job of putting ads on TV, but after that, they don't really measure up to the way we try to create a client experience that's outstanding. And we're always willing to review a case and give a second opinion, just like with a doctor, because not all law firms are created equal.
I guess that's a normal thing. Just go to Moulton Law, Google it, and find out, and just give them a call. And like you say, if you come in, you get to see a Moulton. You don't get shuffled off to somebody else. You get to see a Moulton, and that's good to know because a lot of people don't know how to do that stuff, like me. And maybe you can coach us through. So Moulton Law, they won't back down. They will take your questions about your case if you have a question.
Yes, whether it's a new case or an existing case, give us a call. We'd be glad to go over it with you. There's no charge to review your case with you. And a lot of times it makes good sense just to get a second opinion.
Good stuff from Moulton Law. They don't back down, but they will give you a second opinion. All right. He'll give you a second opinion too. So, all right, here's the deal. I'm going to give you guys a hint based on this thing from fifthquarter.net. The school having the most points scored, according to the player who last played there at that school. I'm going to give you a hint. Out of the top 5, 2 of them are the schools in this state. Most points scored in the Super Bowl based on players' last college attended, all right? and I'll give you one of the names, one of the schools in the top 5, Notre Dame. All right, Notre Dame. So let's see if you guys can get it to get any.
Miami.
Miami is number 1 with 84 points. That surprises me.
Florida's going to be in there too.
Florida's number 2.
Okay.
Florida has 82 and Miami has 84. Then Penn State's 81, Cal 66, Notre Dame. I don't know why that stat impresses me, but
Cal throws me there. I would not have guessed Penn State and Cal.
Yeah. So anyway, and you think some of the powerhouses that we think of might,
Ohio State, Georgia.
Yeah, I'll give you just running down real quick. Miami is 1, Florida 2, Penn State 3, Cal 66 is 4, Notre Dame, then Texas Tech, Georgia, Memphis, Nebraska, Stanford, etc. But anyway, Florida and Miami. Remember those days, David, when those Florida schools were dominant?
What I would do to have the big 3 be the big 3 at the same time again.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, the 90s were great.
Allie, if you were around, Allie, you weren't working in the media at that point in time, but John, I'm sure you know the history. There was one unbelievable stat at one time. They were like, teams that came to Florida were like 2 and 800 or something. I mean, it's ridiculous. They couldn't beat the Florida teams at all, those teams. And of course, good seasons for them. Hey, all right, so guys, on to the issue of pro football, the game, and you're both you're students of the game. David, you see a lot of NFL football. You've seen it morph and change. I mean, Shane Matthews told me Patrick Mahomes will be the greatest quarterback who ever played the game. He does make some incredible plays, and the speed of the game the other night just blew me away. I'm thinking, wow, this is college football, to me. I thought of it, well, maybe this could become more like college football. Your thoughts, David, first, and then Allie's.
Well, there's no doubt that the offenses on Sundays have taken a lot from Saturdays in the last 10 years. There's no question. And then they've even hired a couple of the Saturday guys. Chip Kelly had a couple of opportunities on Sunday because the NFL was so enamored with his schemes. So, and, the running quarterbacks, working them in and not being afraid to run them. We've seen quarterbacks run for generations in college. We have not seen NFL teams willfully run their quarterbacks 8 to 15 times a game. Baltimore should have done a lot more of it Sunday, but Buffalo has no problems running Josh Allen as their primary runner sometimes. So there's no question. And unfortunately, college football has become the NFL because it's pay for play. I mean, it is. I mean, it's minor league football right now. It's not college football anymore. It's minor league ball.
It is.
I think that's where they're seeing, viewership for the NFL is skyrocketing right now. And
it is.
I do think that part of that is due to the fact that people are frustrated with college football. They're frustrated that, if I wanted to watch a bunch of guys that just get paid a bunch of money to play a sport, I'd watch the better version, which is the NFL. College is different because you make these connections to these players and you watch them grow up in front of your eyes, right? And you watch the struggles and the triumphs, and that's what makes us all buy in and love college football. And not that some of those stories don't exist, because they do, but there's a lot of mercenaries in college football now. And if we wanted to watch mercenaries, we'd just watch on Sundays.
Yeah. And right, and now you got the Spanish David season, longer season. You got that going next year, and it's just players can move about even better than they can in the NFL. It's really a different game, David. And some would say the NFL has a better game right now.
Well, I would like to think the NFL is always going to have a better game. The college game's always going to have more pageantry. But I mean, the product on Sundays is better than the product on Saturdays. I mean, it is, as Ali talked about. It's better players. I mean, the product should be better. Different, but it should be better. To me, the danger for college football right now is, and buddy, I've always said this, there are two things that make college sports special: tradition and rivalries. Well, that's very different than life on Sundays. But if Saturdays is becoming nothing more than, well, hell, we might as well have a salary cap and, all play by the same damn rules and make them employees and blah, blah, blah. Well, where's the rivalries and the tradition? I mean, this is why I tailgate the way I do. This is why I get enamored. This is why we move to Gainesville. We stay in Gainesville as a family. We raise our family as Gators. So we have Gator kids, okay? And we wear the same colors. All the dressers in the house have the same clothing for 40 years. Okay. And then they go and they come back on holidays and we put the same garb on and we go to the games. Okay. I mean, that's what I think is in danger for college sports. And if you lose that, I don't know how you get it back.
Well said.
It's why people name their dogs Tebow and Warfel, and why your grandmother doesn't watch the third quarter, and your grandfather has to mute and listen to the radio and turn his chair around 3 times before they take the field. Like, the pageantry and the tradition is what makes it different. It's what makes it special and fun. And I think as fans, when we get to the point where we realize that we care more about the jersey than the guys on the field wearing the jersey, it becomes less fun for us. It becomes less interesting for us. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of people who dagger to the heart that ETN could transfer to Georgia. My first thought was, damn, we're not doing a good enough job stressing who our rivals are in that locker room if you feel like you can make that jump. But it's the point in time we're at in college football right now.
Is it ruining the game?
Yeah.
I don't know about ruining. I mean, it's still, the industry's still doing pretty well, but I do think it's damaged it. I do. And it's why I really believe that the powers that be need to join forces and figure out a solution in the next handful of years, because otherwise I feel the disconnect's going to happen. That Allie's kids are not going to feel the same way about the Gators as their parents. And if you're college football, you can't afford that.
Right.
Yes, that's very scary. It really is. And it'd be a sad day. All right. So let's get down to the essence of what we have, the storylines we have in the NFL.
By the way, Gators and Kentucky tied with 3.5
all,
to play.
Right? Yeah, that's what I hear.
77 all, 3:20 to go.
I don't know why anybody's watching this.
Big opportunity for the Gators right now.
Yeah,
huge
they
opportunity.
need this real bad. Exactly right. So I'm trying to turn my on and look out of the corner of my eye. But I would say you're right. It is a critical juncture of football, and I think the only saving grace might be some kind of coalition between the NFL and college football, if that can happen. But I don't see any kind of solution.
I think college has to police itself. Okay,
I think
they do.
The conferences have to get together and make some rules, and then abide by them. Essentially, there's got to be some guidance from the conferences on how much is too much, what is okay, what are the guidelines here.
Well, they can't get along. They're all fighting for each other's teams.
Well, I think the first place to start is, Allie, do you honestly believe that you could get the SEC schools to come to an agreement as to what the rules are going to be for pay for play going forward? Essentially agree to a salary structure, okay? A cap.
I think
of some kind. You do?
Majority of the coaches want it. I think now the only issue that I foresee is that I think it's going to take the universities being able to participate financially. It is not a sustainable model what we're doing right now. We've talked about this on the show many times, but we're asking the fans to pay for their favorite players to drive cars and take their girlfriends on dates and whatever else. Meanwhile, the university is pocketing TV revenue, ticket sales, sponsorships, building bajillion-dollar buildings. It's insanity. That's what the rules are right now. So I'm not saying that the universities have a choice in that at the moment, but that's where the change needs to happen. There's so little return on investment for these fans, essentially, and it's just an asinine model.
Yeah, this model's not going to work going forward. I mean, they're piecing it together as they go. I do think it's telling that the head coach of Boston College left for the NFL tonight, and he left because he basically has let it be known, yeah, the college football that I was coaching in, I don't want any part of that. That doesn't interest me at all. That's not, he even said that reportedly, that's not the sport I came back to as head coach of BC 4 years ago. 4 years ago. He's basically saying, yeah, it's a totally different sport right now. It doesn't interest me at all.
Even the coaches are becoming interchangeable, Allie.
Yes, and we've heard so many coaches say that either publicly or behind closed doors, that, this is either why they're not interested in jumping back into coaches if it's somebody that's, coaching either in the NFL or have stepped away from the game, or behind closed doors, current college coaches saying, like, this is wild. This is not what I signed up for.
I don't think that you'll get agreement even within the conferences, because I don't think that every conference has a power structure, and I don't think the top end of the SEC and the Big Ten is going to agree to play by the same rules as the middle and the bottom of those conferences. Why? Because of the advantages that they have, including financial. So why would Georgia agree to play by the same rules as Missouri? I think the best college football can do is baseball, which is we set up whatever system we set up. Everybody's got to play by it. But we know within our system, we're going to have the Rays and Marlins at one end, and we're going to have the Dodgers and Yankees and a few others at the other end. And it's always going to be that way, because I think realistically, Allie, Ohio State, and we can all name the schools, they're always going to be here in terms of the advantages that they have. And there's always going to be a group of schools that are going to be closer. And it doesn't mean that the Rays and the Marlins can't win. They can. We just saw Missouri have a double-digit win season. I mean, you can get, and by the way, Missouri did it by getting a couple 5-stars through their NIL program. I mean, and finding a Division II kid who led the SEC in rushing. But, I mean, you can win. It's just that year in, year out, it's going to be harder for you than it is the elite. And I don't ever see the elite playing by the same rules as the middle class.
But they've never played by the same rules, no matter what they've been, right? I mean, there always existed the $100 handshakes and the, oh, mom got a brand new AC and we somehow committed to a school and whatever else. But honestly, in hindsight, all of that looks pretty damn benign to $9 million contracts for 18-year-olds. So isn't it an improvement if we set up some guidelines, even if there is some gray areas for some schools, than what it is that we're doing right now?
Oh, definitely. But they won't even, will they even agree to the rule book, if you know what I mean? Like, do you think you could get the 16 SEC schools to just come to, like bumper bowling? I mean, do you think they could just agree to, the lane with the bumpers on each side? Okay, and then you guys figure out how you're going to get your strike. I just don't know if we'll ever even have that.
And that was the genius of Greg Sankey, I think, is that he convinced the league a long time ago, rising tide raises all ships, and able to make them understand, sometimes it's best for Alabama to be the champion, or whatever the case may be. In other words, I think it's some form of socialism, I guess. Whatever it may be, but it works.
The SEC, it just means more, and making people SEC fans and individual school fans better than pretty much anybody else has. I don't bet other conference chants SEC. No. That is a phenomenon that is uniquely Southeastern Conference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Sure. I know a whole bunch of people who are Big Ten fans who wouldn't root for Ohio State if they were playing Al-Qaeda.
Right. And that's the difference. is that I have friends from here who came down from the Big Ten. We don't get why you root for Georgia or root for Alabama in a game. We would never do that at Ohio State. We wouldn't care if they were on fire. We wouldn't, you know what, to them. I mean, they don't believe in interconference fraternities, you know. And you're right, David. They hate each other.
I do wonder if some of that is uniquely Southern as well, not just Southeastern Conference.
Yeah.
I grew up, my dad always said we root for every single team on their schedule except for the week that we play them. It makes it that much sweeter if we beat them, and it makes our loss look better if we've lost to them. So I grew up under the motto that you cheer for everybody except for the week you play them, because that's what's best for Florida. Was always the way he presented it. And I mean, I know people have different ways of going about that, but I do think that, part of that is regional, not just conference.
Yeah. All right, let me get to David on this. And Allie, I don't want you to get your feelings hurt. If you want to opt out, that's fine. But I have a couple of topics. Or weigh in, it's fine. Things in the news. And David, the one today about golf is really kind of a big story. All of a sudden they now have voted unanimously to finalize a $3 billion deal with Strategic Sports Group. I'd never heard of it before. Apparently, they're going to make it a 50-50 deal with LIV. What have you know about that? What have you heard of it? And what do you think?
Well, it's a bunch of billionaire owners. The guy who owns Arthur Blank, who owns the Falcons, Steve Cohen, who owns the Mets, the Fenway Sports Group, who owns a Premier League team in the Red Sox. And they're throwing the money in. They're investing in the PGA Tour. And what I'm curious about, and listen, I'm not good at making myself money, never mind making somebody else money, but I don't know how me giving the PGA Tour $3 billion is going to make me money, but they obviously feel it will. But once again, Allie, we're talking about money. I mean, it seems as if it's all about money, and occasionally it's about winning.
Allie, you follow golf a little bit.
Little bit, tiny bit, but yeah, I mean, that's the era we're in, just in sports in general, right? That it's all about money.
Yeah. That's
now the one interesting thing is, since they got the money from this Strategic Sports Group, they're claiming they don't need any of the Saudi money. So this could keep the LIV on one side, the PGA Tour on the other. It could prevent them maybe from joining forces, which the thought was that they were. So we'll see what happens there, whether you're going to have two totally separate leagues going forward, or whether or not the Saudis will in fact throw money in as well.
Money will win again for sure. All right, last subject of the night. Great job, guys. Thank you so much for being on the show. You guys are wonderful to be on with. I like it. I wish it was every night, actually. So, David, you responded to somebody's tweet about all-time favorite announcers. And you threw up Buck and Aikman, right?
Well, no, we just had a poll question on the show, we just used the 4 number A teams now in the NFL. We just asked our audience, so between Buck and Aikman, Burkhardt and Olsen, Tirico and Collinsworth, and Nance and Romo, which group do you like the best? That's all. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
all.
Well,
I mean, Olsen's out of work. He'll be devoted. I mean, anyway, he is really good too, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I will say Brady's cutting him $7 million. I mean, he was making $10 million as the number one analyst. Going to the B analyst, he now is down to $3 million. So Brady's costing him $7 million. I hope Tom at least, gets him a gift card or something.
Really,
by the way, Gators hit a 3 with 5 seconds to go to force overtime.
Wow.
Well, watch that.
We got to let you guys go. Go watch it. Thank you. Great stuff. Allie, thank you. Great talking to you. Do you have go ahead, David. You have something to say?
No, I was just waving, Allie. Take care.
Right. Guys, thank you. Wonderful job. Appreciate you both.
Yeah.
All right. Sweet and sour. Another good night with Allie and David. So we're going to say good night and go watch this final overtime with Kentucky and Florida. And to remind you about our friends at Brentstar Medical Research, who make this possible. They have a high-quality, patient-centered clinical research facility right in Ocala, and they bring cutting-edge clinical research trials to the city in areas like Alzheimer's, psoriasis, osteoarthritis, migraine, fibromyalgia, and many other conditions that affect our community. Since their inception in 1998, RenStar has participated in more than 700 clinical research trials, continue to partner with prominent pharmaceutical and biomedical companies throughout the medical industry. That's RenStar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. Thanks again, folks. Sorry for the earlier problems we had with our Wi-Fi, but hey, this is the way it is these days. It's what happens. We're going to go watch a little basketball, Gators and Wildcats in overtime.